Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alexey, and today I have a special guest, Kellen McGregor. Kellen is a guitar player, songwriter, producer, mixing and mastering engineer, and he's a founder of metalcore band Memphis May Fire. Besides playing the guitar in Memphis May Fire, he also does recording, mixing and mastering of Memphis May Fire songs and albums. Also, he has wonderful and very knowledgeable courses on mixing Memphis May Fire songs on Nail the Mix, the best online community on learning how to do recording, mixing and mastering of metal music. So, if you want to learn from Kellen McGregor on mixing songs by Memphis May Fire, you can check out his mixing sessions at Nail the Mix. It's a huge honor to have you on my YouTube channel today, Mr. McGregor. And let's start our interview. How you became a sound engineer?
Kind of by accident, to be honest. I was always kind of interested in it, but I don't think I ever took it seriously. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, oh, that's cool. And then you kind of just get more into it and more into it and more into it. And, we did some records with Cameron Mizell back in the day. And I learned a lot from him and just kind of experimented over time. And then, here we are.
How you got into mixing metal?
I think also kind of by accident as well. Because at some point, way back in the early days of Memphis May Fire, we had a record deal with this label called Trustkill. I don't know if you remember them, but they had 18 Visions and a bunch of those types of bands back in the day, and it just wasn't the best fit for us. So in order to get off of the record deal, we had to, give them all the rights to our masters and our publishing, and then also turn in an EP tomorrow, pronto. And so I just kind of had to figure it out, and I realized that I kind of liked doing it, and then just kept doing it.
How you joined Memphis May Fire?
Well, I started the band in about 2000, mid 2006 or early 2006. So that's why I'm the oldest one in the band. So I started it way back in the day, and here we are, 18 years later, pretty much. Yeah.
How your drums recorded for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
I'm trying to remember exactly how we did it. Basically, I had a conversation with our drummer, and it was kind of getting down to the wire with trying to get stuff done. So I just told him hey, don't worry about learning the kick patterns or learning any of the feet. Just learn the hands and the cymbal stuff, and I'll program the kick in, because I'm going to chop it up and edit it anyway. So I was don't even worry about that. Just play your feet on the floor. And we went to a studio in kind of East Nashville and tracked it in about 2 days. Just a real simple setup. And then, it just made it super easy for him.
What was your approach on mixing drums for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
We had already kind of sat with the demos for a while. We'd had the demos for a couple months. And I wanted to try and kind of keep a little bit of the the vibe and the flavor from the demos, but just kind of, I don't know, just try and see if I could fit that into the album, that, because when you do a demo, sometimes stuff fits together, but then you go to do the actual song and it sounds way different. So I just kind of borrowed some pieces from the demos in terms of the drum styles and tones and samples. And I pretty much knew, I was programming the kick, pretty much knew I was going to replace the toms because I already had toms that I liked. And it was really just fitting the overheads and the rooms together with the samples.
How Bass Tone was recorded for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
That was another where it kind of we're all of us in the band, we are in our mid and late 30s now, so we all have other jobs. Me doing studio stuff is my other main job. Our bassist Corey. He's got like a bunch of other stuff that he does. He's super talented. He's very good at like doing anything with his hands. He's like, you know, welding, metalworking, building stuff. I mean, you name it, he can pretty much do it. So he has all these jobs that he's always working on. And he also will tech for bands like The Used and All Time Low and whatnot from time to time. So he, I think, was out on the road, and it kind of came down to like, hey, like, I don't have time really to like learn these parts. So can, you know, and I don't want, and then me saying to him, like, I don't want you to have to try and cram and like learn this stuff while you're out on the road trying to do your job. So we just took the program bass, and it's just 2 layers. It's like I think one is nuclear bass, and the other one is the slap and a sub preset in Omnisphere.
What is your usual approach on mixing metal bass, and how do you control low end?
It's always different. I mean, mixing bass in metal is kind of hard, especially like when you know, you get to the chorus and you like want this big fat like sub bass to like fill everything out, but then you get to like a riffy section and it's fast and you've got like all these moving notes and you got to figure out how to deal with like how much sub do you want versus how much like upper mid, you know, bass, like kind of stuff. It's hard. I still feel like not good at it. I just try and go with sounds that I know, and if I have like a DI from somebody, then I'll try and like DI match it a little bit and try and EQ the DI so that it gets a little bit closer to what I'm used to. And then it's either always parallax for the upper stuff. Sometimes it's Pod Farm, like the Pod Farm SansAmp plugin. Or occasionally I'll pull it into Pro Tools and I'll pull up the SansAmp in Pro Tools and then just print that. But it's pretty much always one of those 3, and then just figuring out how to fit the sub in. So it's either always like an Omnisphere sub or Serum or something like that, and then just trying to like sandwich them together and make them play nice with each other and figure out where the crossover is going to be at. So it's hard.
How were guitars recorded for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
Usually, like when we do a record, I will do like scratch guitars for like the demos and whatnot, like while we're still writing, and just so we have a demo, I can send it off to Matty and he can write vocals to it with Cody. But this go around, I think I did a little bit better scratch tracks, so I kept probably most of it. A lot of it I just went back and re-edited to the grid. But I did pretty much all of it with this one. This is the Mike Mushock PRS baritone, and it rips. I put a different pickup in there. I think it's either a Pegasus or a Nazgul. I used to have a Tremonti in there. I really loved the Tremonti pickup. I think I took it out. But I just tracked everything with that. And for most of it, the lowest string I had was like a 72. And it was a little floppy sometimes, and this is a 27.5 or 27.7. So it was tricky. I had to play a lot of stuff slow. Get the intonation to be steady, and even then I'd pull the DI into Melodyne and then just kind of Melodyne those super low notes so they're nice and flat. But yeah, it was just that straight into, I either did it into this Avalon, whatever it is, this little DI box, or I might have even gone straight into the Apollo and done like what do they call it? Like these little channel strip guys. I think I did something like that. And then just right into the Logic. And I think all of my tones were some variation of my preset in STL tones, probably number 17.
What was your approach on mixing guitars for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different from our last record, from Remade in Misery, because they were pretty like bright. The whole record was a little too bright. But they're pretty bright, and most of the tuning was a little bit higher up, so I felt like it worked. It just kind of, you know, I feel like higher tunings just in general sound a little bit brighter. And the lower you go, sometimes you kind of have to compensate for that. But with this record, there's so much vocally that's going on, and so much with the production that's kind of happening, just always moving in the background, that I didn't want like a really bright guitar to like step on that and like kind of block it, you know? So I intentionally made them like pretty dark in the mix, but just kept like enough crunch on there to where you can still hear like the note and like the pick attack and stuff like that. But I wanted them to be like kind of dirty and like sludgy and fuzzy. That's kind of how I wrote them. Like 90% of the tone, uh, like as far as the mix goes, was like basically from the demo. So I just like most of the guitars, after I retracked, everything, I just printed that tone from the demo and pulled it into the mix session and then just like fine tuned it.
When mixing metal guitars, which frequencies should you pay attention to when EQing to make metal guitars sound great in the mix?
I know that's a tough one. I mean, I think everybody hears is a little bit different. Like, I know that I definitely hear guitar tones differently than most people. I think probably because I didn't start as a guitar player. I started as a drummer way back in the day. So I definitely approach it a little bit differently. But there's always something weird in like 3.5 or 4K. I really don't like 6K for some reason. I don't know what it is. I'm finding 6K in like lots of stuff and just pulling it out. I just don't like it. Like snare drums, like that weird, and guitars and stuff like that. I don't know. So yeah, it's like a 3.5 or 4 or 6K. I always have to worry about those. There's like almost always something between like 600 and 700 hertz that's like, you want the note, but it's also kind of annoying. It's like kind of getting in the way of the vocal. And then I always have something funky with the low end that I'm watching out for, especially because like the guitars on this record, I put R bass on them, but just like super, super lightly to kind of help them gel with the bass a little bit better. So I had to do some correction on that too, just kind of like chilling out the low end. So it's usually something like around 100, It's hard. Mixing in general is hard. Anybody that says it's easy, they're lying.
How was Matty Mullins' vocal recorded for Shapeshifter album by Memphis May Fire?
I'm pretty sure he's got the same, I've got the Manley sitting up there. It's the same, should be the same one. Yeah, it's the Manley reference. And I think it was that into, he had I think a Warm Audio, like 73 style preamp. And I think it went from that into, I think, a distressor, and then an LA2A, and then into his Apollo. I'm pretty sure he might have had the LA2A first. I can't remember. It was the other way. I don't remember. But it was some combination of that. And they like came in pretty compressed already. So I think when I went to go like do my usual like squash that I usually do on his vocal, because I squash him like pretty hard because it makes like his mouth noises like kind of come up. It just makes it sound like more in your face. I kind of had to dial it back a little bit because they were already like pretty like compressed and spiky sounding. So, but luckily they already sounded great, so I didn't have to do too much to them.
What is your approach on mixing extreme metal vocals?
I think depending on the vocalist, if they do like higher screams, or if they're like more of a baritone, like if they do like more low stuff, will kind of dictate like where you're high passing the vocal, or like how much distortion, or if you want more distortion up top, or if you want more that's like around 1K as opposed to like 2 or 3K. But if when I get screams, I almost always will try the JST gain reduction because it just sounds awesome, I always try that. If I feel like that sounds too bright or too like kind of mid forward, I'll try like the CLA 76, or I have like a studio rack, like a Wave studio rack that thing that I made where it's like this weird high pass that goes into the soft tube FET, and then into the 76, and then back out. And then I do like soothe and other stuff, but it's always pretty much just like slamming it. Just got to slam it with a couple of things of compression, and then either, like some decapitator, or like the kilohertz distortion, or Native Instrument, what's it called? Dirt. It's like that weird yellow plugin. Just like I'll blend a little bit of that in. It's pretty much always some combination of those, and then feed it all into a bus, and then it's just like stacking Gullfoss or Soothe or something to like, now that you got all these screams, it's like, whoa, that's real bright. And then you got to like kind of like pull it down. It's always some variation of that, yeah.
What tips can you give on mastering a metal mix in a mixing project? And in this case, which plugins is better to use for mastering on your mix bus?
A lot of times when I start a mix, I'll have some plugins on there, and a lot of them will be like bypassed, like on my master bus. I almost always will do like all of the band and maybe production. Sometimes production goes outside, but it'll go to like, I call it my one bus, which is just like right next to my mix bus or my master or whatever. And I'll always have some stuff on there that I think I might use, but maybe I just have it bypassed temporarily. But there's almost always either Pro L2, which I've been using all-round mode a lot lately, and I like that for some reason. It's either Pro L2, Invisible Limiter. That works great on some stuff and not for other stuff. It like sounds a bit, it's weird. It like sounds a bit like you get more vocal in the middle, but then you also get like this interesting width to it. It's just not quite as like, it can sound a little bit more smashed sometimes, depending on how hard you get it. But either Pro L2, Invisible Limiter, sometimes Ozone Maximizer, probably Flatline, the first one. Almost always Soothe, doing like a little bit on like the low and the high, and kind of leaving the mid alone. Sometimes Gullfoss, doing like a tiny bit. And then I probably almost always have like Pro Q3, like just fixing last minute stuff. But I know I'll always have some combination of like those 4 or 5 on there.
My final question is, do you use reference tracks for mixing and mastering? And in this case, since you are mixing and mastering for your own band, do you use all the songs of Memphis May Fire for referencing, or do you use music of other bands for referencing?
With the latest Memphis record, that one specifically, I definitely like went back and forth and kind of referenced our last record, which kind of made me realize like, oh, it's pretty bright. I was like, I kind of overdid that one a little bit. But just for like in terms of like trying to get a similar amount of punch or low end or something like that. But I'll also reference pretty much anything Cervini's done, some Jonathan Dolis stuff, or Jonathan Roach, just anything that I always have YouTube open like on my computer, and whatever's like hot and new, I'll just like listen to it, and if it sounds cool, I'll save that as like a reference. So I'll always have like go-to stuff that I just know in my head that I want to reference it to. It's helpful, but at the same time, it can be tricky when like you have to kind of pick and choose what you're referencing pretty carefully, because if you're doing like if I'm mixing like a pretty heavy band, but I really like the top end on like this rock track, I just have to like really remember as I'm listening to the reference, like, don't think about anything else. Just think about like what the top end sounds like, because you can kind of trick yourself sometimes, depending on what you're listening to thinking that your mix now needs to sound like that mix. And it's more so like you're just trying to like kind of mimic a texture as opposed to like making a mix sound like that. And it's easy to fall into that trap of being like, oh, I got to make it sound like that. It's like, really, you just need to make it sound like what it sounds like, and then just borrow some bits and pieces. Like, oh, I really like how this 60 hertz sounds on this, or I really like how this, this 8K sounds on this record. Like, how can I kind of like borrow? Like, what did they kind of do so I can borrow that? It's cool. It's just, you have to be a little careful with it.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful and very knowledgeable interview. And thank you so much for nailing the mix session on Mix and Shapeshifter song by Memphis May Fire, because it's a very knowledgeable song to watch and to learn from about mixing. And thank you so much for everything you do for audio community. It's a huge privilege to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm sure, like, dude, there've been like maybe 2 different times that I've worked with like Russian engineers, and they're always super good, like way better than me. I'm like, dude, you guys are great already. Like, I don't have to do anything. So it's just, yeah, it's a privilege, man. I appreciate it.